Hello, I'm Tom Terry. I'm currently serving as the president of the Ocean Pines Association Board. I'm in my second year, my first term on the board, and I look forward to working with my fellow board members to continue the forward movement of our community.
Hi, I'm Pete Gomsak, and I'm currently treasurer of the board, and I'm beginning the third year of my first term on the board.
Hello, I'm Bill Wentworth. I'm a newly elected board member. I've been selected by my peers to serve as a vice president, and I'm looking forward to working with the OPA management team.
I'm Terry Moore, newly elected to the board of directors and looking forward to working with everyone.
I'm Dave Stevens. I'm currently serving my fifth term on the board of directors.
I'm Dan Stikursky. I'm starting the beginning of my third term on the board of directors and serving as secretary for the board.
Ray Unger, in my second term on the board.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, approval of the agenda. The agenda has one item on it, which is the discussion of the selection of the objectives for 2011-2012 year and public comment. Motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Public comment. Media question. Okay, moving right along. Everybody have a copy of what I had sent out before, but I have extras here, thanks to Tara. Haven't changed? Haven't changed since I sent it out. Okay. Here's the process that I'm going to propose that we follow on this. It's going to be very critical that we remember we're not here to debate these particular issues as whether they're going to ultimately be voted up or down or those kinds of issues. We're here to select the primary objective for this coming year. Last year, an extremely long list of objectives that, depending on how you defined them, you could come out saying they were accomplished or come out saying they aren't. I wanted to be a little tighter this year. It's kind of a theme this year. The objectives are and are not. It's in front of me, created as a result of me reaching out to a number of them for input. Some of them were a paragraph long. I did try to turn them into some form of objective statement. And the approach I would like to take here is to just go through this list, and those who believe it belongs on a top objective list can speak. Those who believe it doesn't belong on a top objective list can speak. I'm not looking for an argument. And one of the approaches that I have used in organizations before is to, once we have gone through that process of all 12, one of the approaches that can be taken by a group is to give each member 6 votes. You can't vote twice on one. And you basically vote for up to 6 of the things that you think ought to be left on the list to be the primary objectives. And then you see from that first round of votes, what's the sense of the group across the board. You're not going to get the top 6. You may end up with 6 or 8. You may end up with 4 that get the majority of the votes. That's one way of doing it. That's the approach I'm going to propose we take to select. Because again, the objective here is to get this down to a list of objectives for our work for this coming year. Any questions or comments?
Just one, if you have an objective that you agree with to a point, but you think it needs a little modification one way or the other to be really acceptable, do we talk about that today?
Sure, absolutely.
Fine.
Yeah, I mean, this was my rewording in some cases of rather long write-ups, and we can certainly adjust the wording here. That's part of the discussion. Yes, Pete?
The objective of this objective setting is to establish the board goals for the year, in essence, what we view as the most important things that we as a board ought to work on, not to the exclusion of other things. And as I said at the last meeting, during the course of the year, any director can identify things that they wish to bring up for discussion, for voting on, for modifications. It doesn't have to be on that list to be brought up, correct?
Correct.
And so that can be done by any director at any time. But these are the ones that the majority of the board are embracing for this fiscal year as what I think you determined as the highest priority, the most important goals for us as a group, right?
That's what we're trying to do.
Notwithstanding individual attitudes or objectives or whatever. Okay.
Yes, Bill?
Not to be problem making here, but I can go along with how we're doing this, but we seem to be interchanging objectives and goals. Objectives are those things that you do to accomplish your goal. There should be a goal. You don't do objectives to accomplish a goal. You have a goal, and the objectives are those things that you do to accomplish the goal. Now, I don't know if we have a goal, but that's, and I mean, I understand how you're operating, but I'm just saying, semantically speaking, in the goals and objectives world, that's how that operates. And I'll just point of information.
Okay. For the, I mean, for the purposes of this discussion, these are the things we want to make sure get done.
Fine.
Call them an objective, call them a goal, whatever you want to call them. That's where we're trying to go. Questions, other comments? Everybody okay with the approach? Problems? Okay. All right. The first one on the list is to review. Does everybody have a copy of these things?
Others, are you asking others in the room?
Yeah.
I have two.
We have some extras here.
Got some extra down there if anybody needs it. The first is to review, adjust, and/or approve the general manager's next phase of his 0 to 2 years and long-term facilities plan based on campus management approach for near-term plans to include third-party engineering reports, high-level project plans, financial performance estimates, and business plans, and move to referendum those approved plans if required. That's how it's worded right now. Let's start with those who believe that should be part of what we're doing, or if there's some rewording, we can discuss that as well.
I'd like to add a point to the bottom of that
Okay.
as point E, and that would be a general estimate of and sourcing alternatives for required financing.
I believe that's B under 2, is it not?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think it's covered.
that's fine.
As long as 2 makes the list.
See, I'm just, what I'm trying to make sure is that the general manager includes funding in his business plan case when he presents them to the board as his recommendations. I don't want to just see a recommendation that says, here's an engineering study, here's what we need to do, let's go do it, here's the way we want to go with bids. I want to see a ballpark, and this is how I suggest we finance this thing as well.
Okay.
I mean, I view 1 and 2 as sequential. 1 is obviously to review the general manager's suggestions, recommendations, whatever's been done, and then number 2 is to then take it the next step, review, adjust, and capital list, including funding options.
So here's what we want.
Sequential, 1 and 2.
Here's what we want to do, and here's how we pay for it.
Yeah.
I still want the general manager looking at that as part of this plan. I really do.
You could put it in C, financial performance estimates, funding, comma, funding, whatever, and business plans.
Again, if I may, it's a 2-step process. 1, we identify what it is, and then 2, how we're going to approach it. So in my mind, you can't get to 2 until you approve.
But I think
Yeah.
what Dan is saying, he wants the general manager to be looking at that as well in number 1. Am I correct? or
Yes,
not?
absolutely. I don't want to see plans coming in from the general manager that don't have financing ranges or estimates attached to them and some consideration on his part about how he thinks we ought to pay for them as part of his recommendation.
So I know the group you're working with, as I understand it, is not at all concerned, not focusing on that particular part of it, right?
Correct, but I mean, I can do that.
Yeah, you can, yeah, but he doesn't have any help doing that right now.
Oh, that's his problem.
That's his problem, okay.
Well, to Pete's point, 1 and 2 are kind of connected at the hip. Perhaps we should make them all one.
Hang on, I wouldn't want, we need to get to 1 pretty quickly here, okay? I wouldn't want to delay 1 while the general manager takes time and energy to start now developing the financing mechanisms when he doesn't even know whether or not his board is going to be supportive of this project, that project. So I think it's a 2-step. I don't want any further delays. I think we've talked about that enough. We need to get on with identifying and moving forward with a plan for the major facility.
Okay, so you're suggesting keep 1 and 2 separate?
I absolutely think
Fair
1 and 2 separate, because we just need, I don't want any further delays. I don't think any of us want any further delays. So I think, as Bob has outlined to us even at the last meeting, he said he's going to present to us a range of options. We'll have the opportunity to say, no, you're going on the wrong path here, we want to go on this path. If we burden that in step number 1 with his outlining of financing options, I just fear that we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot by taking more time than we need to. Let's establish what it is we think is important to accomplish, number 1, and then the process, secondly, of going about how to finance it, not labor him.
Well, with
Or saddle him
all
with
right,
that.
with
That's all, Dan.
with all due respect, I disagree with you because I believe that financing these projects is part of the decision-making process the board has to go through to decide whether it's a viable project or not. And I mean specifically like that, by that, let's take the yacht club. Okay, there are, at the moment, several options for looking at the yacht, rebuilding it, one of which is doing some significant maintenance to it, and one of which is maybe stepping through a series of planned maintenances in that particular venue. If the cost of of maintenance is very, very close to the cost of destruction and replacement, the board is going to make a different decision, I submit, than if the cost of and the financing for, because that will contribute to the cost of how you pay for it, is broadly spread. In other words, if it's much less expensive to maintain and we can finance that or otherwise find the funds relatively inexpensively, it is going to make a difference about how the board decides. So I don't think they're separate. I do think it's part of the same plan.
Let me bring a level of detail here. Number 1 is for 0 to 2 years. Number 2 is 2 to 5.
Got it.
I believe that may be the reason you're suggesting to add review funding options
I want to see it.
number 1.
Very much want to see them in the
Because
beginning.
2 funding option review doesn't refer to 0 to 2.
Nope.
The way it's
Correct.
written.
Not at all.
Okay?
You're quite right.
Okay. So the issue on the table is, do we or don't we include review funding options and plans to number 1? I mean, the assumption
well,
was that
let
it's
me-
handled under number 2, and it's really not, because of the
Well,
way I
it
wrote
might,
it.
it
I'm
may
hoping
be,
to do
it may.
number 1 in October, by the way.
It may be, let me ask a point of clarification
Yeah.
here. Would someone please define financial performance estimates? What does that mean? To me, does that mean an estimate of what it's going to cost? Or what does financial performance estimates mean?
See, I read that as operating performance, the financial performance of the modified, what will the modification of a structure have on its financial performance? Because that's what we're looking at in the end for all of these venues.
Or I could be looking at how much is it going to cost to do it? That's all I'm saying. We need a definition of what this means.
When the business plan is complete and presented to us, part of that business plan will be what performance estimates will become from the business plan when it's initiated.
And
That's how I see it.
And the business plan could also include how we're going to go about financing it. And, it's kind of open-ended statement there.
So the question is it a number one or is it
And number two, right?
Number two.
The reason I pointed out the clarification is that, and again, in summarizing the various inputs from folks, number one, as it reads right now, you could assume that financial performance includes an assessment of funding options and plans, or you could make it a step E, which is a definitive statement, making it very clear that we want that.
I believe in that, in fact, if you look down this, we get engineering reports, and we get high level, which I don't know what means exactly, but upper level project plans. The financial performance estimates and business plans clearly relate to the business plans of the subsequent operation. And not to necessarily to the renovation of the facility itself. I mean, basically, if you renovate a facility, you're going to have to understand how it's going to be used, and the starting point is, I believe, how it's used now. The facilities we're talking about here are the country club. That's the only major facility that's, I think, being addressed in the 0 to 2 timeframe. Okay.
I think it's the yacht club too.
I think it's the country club and the yacht club.
The yacht club
Yeah.
technically is listed in 2 to 5, but it's being studied simultaneously.
Right.
Well,
They're
there,
hung up on our shoelaces.
there is, well, it's not hung up on a
No, I'm not talking about,
Yeah.
it just,
Okay. It's the yacht club, more recently, the yacht club is, as I understand it, going to be the subject of engineering investigation, okay? Or is, maybe currently, I don't know. But if you look at D, move to referendum those approved plans, I mean, D, if there is one, it's going to be the country club, and you can't have a D without having the costs and the method of finance of billing, and it's not even possible to do that. But I wouldn't say that, there are people who might think that or might not know that, so I think it ought to be explicit. I mean, in fact, the financing should be in there. If there's a D, there's got to be an explanation of the financing, period.
As a matter of fact, what Dave's saying, if there's D, D should really become E, and D should be, because the last thing you're doing is moving to referendum. So D should become E,
Yeah.
and
And the order
the
of
D should be how we're going to go about doing it. Really.
I think that it's a little premature there for
Yeah.
referendum before you've gotten to
But
step
if that's in
2.
there, but what I'm saying, it's how it's written.
Yeah.
How that's written, D should be the last thing you do in one.
I agree.
sure.
Sort of a separate point from that. That wasn't exactly my point. But if you put this in here, I'm sorry. Reading these things, what you're really talking about, I mean, in my mind, you're looking at activities. These are board activities. They're not objectives unless you've got something to do something with. And I think they're awfully vague for an objective. I mean, you can say, okay, we're going to do this good work under item 1, but in my mind, it's not an objective. Not until you get to the point where you have specific things that you're going to review, specific things that you're going to approve, and specific things that you're going to modify. And you have done the appropriate amount of work to understand what they are and what the alternatives are and so forth. It's decision-making time. And I don't see an objective. I mean, you couldn't put a date on this, I don't think. Maybe you could. Referendum? What date would you put on that?
Well, you're talking about an implementation plan at that point. I didn't write this particular one, although I don't disagree with it. To me, it's awfully clear that one of the things that's facing us this coming year is clearly getting an input from the general manager on what his plans are for facilities, 0 to 2 years and 2 to 5, and us review them and approve or disapprove them. And I think that's what 1 and 2 are simply trying to say, with some level of detail beyond it. But, yeah. Pete?
Are we micromanaging ourselves at this juncture? I think we are.
Yeah.
I can combine 1 and 2 and simply say that an objective of this board should be to approve a facilities renovation plan, including the financing, the means of financing those costs associated with that, and determining referendum if appropriate. That's the big picture. We have been talking about 4 different boards. The last board that Dan served on addressed this in a very significant way, the long-term capital needs of this community, the facility needs. They voted to increase the dues $150 that year because of the recognition of significant needs in this community. Here we are. We've done the community center, that's a good thing. But here we are. So rather than get into what's this mean and define this term, and why not a broader level, recognizing that we're a policy organization as a board?
Well, you just stated from my perspective, and I think in answer to Bill Wentworth's comment, you've just made a goal statement, which is quite appropriate, and I wouldn't
It's
disagree
a board
with it.
goal. Let's let this board not
No,
end the year
I don't
without having
disagree.
approved the plan that will carry this community forward and allow it to do the long-range planning that has been so long absent in this community. Let's get on with it and approve a long-term facility renovation plan, including the means to finance it.
Thank you. I just, my.
Would you agree with that, Dan?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
My only objective here was to make sure that the gentleman who's going to be doing this
Right,
work
right.
understands clearly
I agree with you.
that we're looking at the whole picture and not just part of it.
And when I say that, that gets us out of the box, the box that I perceive about, gee, the general manager can't present to the board yet because he hasn't checked box E or box F. Come on, let's get on with it. Let's do what makes sense. That's my perspective.
Any other comments on 1 and 2? I'm going to go through all of them before we come back. Any other comments? All right, number 3. Review and adjust and/or approve business cases for major changes to any amenities, direction, or operation.
I'll comment on that if I may. I don't see the need for that. I think we would need to do that in any event. I think it's saying that if there are major changes, the board ought to be reviewing them. That's what it says to me. If there are major changes, it's not saying we're going to identify major changes. It simply says if they come up, then we need to be part of it. Well, of course we do. I don't know that we need that as an objective for the year, however. Or at least one of the top 6.
Dave?
I don't understand what a major change is.
I'm passing on the
I don't know
words
why
I
it's
got.
there. I know, everybody had suggestions.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
a
that's fine.
business case, I haven't seen a business case in a long time. And so I'd welcome that. But I don't know what a business case for, I mean, what is it that we would do? I mean, I can't even imagine it.
Dave, would you agree that we don't necessarily need that on here?
No.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, well,
Yes,
you
no,
know,
maybe.
here's the problem, Pete. If there is a major change, I mean, when I say if there is, if a major change is put on the table in front of us, then of course, we would definitely require.
absolutely.
You know, if
Whether
this,
it's a goal or
if this
not.
says that we as a board will demand a business case for any significant change in operations, then of course, I would be the first one to raise my hand.
We can do that without it being.
We don't need that.
objective or goal
The
of
top
us.
6
Without, yeah,
right?
May, just if I can, I know you skipped 2, but I have to say.
Well, we combine 1 and 2.
Yeah, I can't buy 2, I can't buy that continued commitment to a 5-year funding plan based upon approved projects, because I don't know what the
Well,
approved projects
but
are.
Dave,
The
what
wording
I had put
says
forward, I
review,
think-
adjust, or approve.
Well,
It doesn't say,
okay.
again, I'm not saying we're approving it, it's saying we're going to review, adjust.
I like that part.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, that's
Tom,
generic.
what I had proposed here a few minutes ago, and I believe Dan was supportive of, was that we combine 1 and 2 at a broader level, which encompasses that and takes 2 as a separate modification. Yeah, okay.
But I specifically.
That's why we moved on to 3.
No, but Dave's point is.
Okay, all right, so basically you're saying that, that A, for an example, is scratched as an objective.
Yeah, it's
If
all
that's-
part of
that's
the
correct,
bigger
okay.
picture thing,
If that's
right?
scratched as an
Yeah,
objective,
it is.
it's fine with me.
Yeah, yeah.
It's precisely what we're saying.
All right, any other comments on the number 3, the business case one? All right, number 4, complete an effort to identify additional funding sources not currently available to Ocean Pines to improve federal and state grants.
For those of you who, if you don't mind, Mr. President, to talk about this for a second, if you go back to the history of Ocean Pines, because we are a homeowners association, we are excluded from county grants, state grants, and federal grants to a large degree. However, we can legislatively change that position in a lot of cases so that we are included. And we have 3 specific examples already extant within Ocean Pines. We have a certified, state-certified police force because we went to Annapolis and changed a law. We have the ability to go charge a service fee for credit card payments on annual dues and other dues type situations that we went to Annapolis and changed the law on. Incorporated towns can do that without having to write the laws. We also have some rather nice checks coming in from the casino because we went to Annapolis and we changed the law. We have in Annapolis right now an extraordinarily strong representative. And therefore, we have the ability to go to Annapolis and say, okay, what's Columbia doing, for example, to get around some of these things? Because they are getting grant funding, like Ocean City, Berlin, and Snow Hill get. And this particular goal is really referring to that. Let's say to ourselves that we are consciously going to go take a hard look at what's available and take whatever action we need to take to make that happen, while we still have the representation in the assembly that we need to do it.
I'm going to comment on this one myself. I think this is something that is a board-level kind of activity that makes a lot of sense to me, anyway, for us to be involved in. I think there's nothing but an upside to this, as far as I'm concerned. But enough of that explains what it is at this point, what we're talking about. Any other questions, negatives, comments?
That's fine with me.
Right? Maybe?
On that, as far as the grants are concerned, when you look at Columbia, you're looking at a community that is a homeowners association, but are available for grants because 65% of their total incomes come from businesses in Columbia, not from residential homeowners. And because of that, they do qualify for certain government grants and things due to business. But that's something that we wouldn't be able to do, primarily because there are no businesses that I know of that are other than ours, that are located within Ocean Pines.
Jerry?
The only thing I don't particularly care for is the word complete, because I think it should be continuing, ongoing, always doing it. Always. Because it changes from one day to the next. It should just always be something that is always considered.
Well,
That's a good point. Evaluate and pursue as necessary
Right.
additional funding sources
Right.
not currently available.
Right.
Evaluate and pursue as appropriate.
Or initiate an ongoing effort.
Yeah, and yeah.
There's the wording.
I think we have an ongoing effort, and I think it's been initiated, and you know, and I'm certainly not going to vote against doing more. Think of the negative on this. Let's vote against it. We don't want any money.
Well, again,
Well, it's a top 6.
just to clarify, once again, we're not voting for or against. We're voting on whether it's a primary
Exactly.
focus of what we're going to spend our time on
As a board this year.
as a board this year. Bill?
Well, I think it's a semantics thing, just the way that's worded. Complete means it's going to be done. This will never be done. This is an ongoing
Right, that's
issue.
that
So
one.
you want to get complete out of there. 'cause
Sorry
It's not going to be.
Sorry for being.
No, but you're right.
Actually, you know, that could be
Technique.
accomplished more easily perhaps by putting it part of the board guidance in the budget process. But anyway, I don't object to it. It's motherhood, but we probably do need to do more. And I'm not against that, but the question is, as we look at the major things that we want to do and narrow down to a key set of objectives for this year, does that qualify as one of the most important?
It's got additional, so that's more.
Absolutely.
We'll find that out later on.
Okay.
Number 5, my famous review, adjust, and/or approve key maintenance programs such as road paving and golf drainage, etc.
Well, that should stay in because those things that we're gonna go through the budget process anyhow, and based on how they're gonna be handled, what they're gonna be done.
If I may, I'm supportive of keeping that as a separate and distinct item. Both are significant projects within this community. The road paving, I remind you all that we have now, with 4 years of accumulated deprivation of funding from the state of Maryland, we're now $2 million in the hole in essence, and $2 million behind in our program. That is a problem, ladies and gentlemen, and rather than just fold that into the normal budget process, I think we really need to take a hard look at that, not just from the standpoint of picking it up because it's been deferred 1 year. We have 4 years of deferral on this program. We have not spent $500,000 a year that historically has been spent on we're not just talking about fixing potholes here. We're talking about the major resurfacing required, very expensive. And we had a 10-year plan. Every organization, every municipality needs a road resurfacing program and have it. And we have had it, and it's been in limbo for 4 years. So I think it's great to have that as a separate and distinct item. And the golf drainage is a similar situation where it's major to this community. We talked a little bit about that at the last meeting. We understood the reason why we took a 1 year off, but it's still very, very important. So I'm in favor of leaving it on there.
Dave?
Yeah, I think I'm agreeing with Pete. We in fact have had, starting back when we started losing the money at first, Kerry and Tom Olson developed a road repaving plan, more in the order of a contingency plan. In other words, given that you're not going to get the money this year, maybe not next year, and we don't know when, how do you stretch this out, and what plan do you need how do you spend the money? What is the new plan? Okay, it is my understanding that in fact they have that. At least it's residing someplace. I also know, that Pete's right about this is the time that something must be done.
We have to.
Okay. Now, again, I think we need to be a little more specific. We need to see that road repaving plan. After Bob goes back, looks at it, says, okay, given all this, here it is. Here's how much money we're going to have to spend over the coming years to get this thing back on track. It's still going to be stretched out to the maximum amount, but we're going to do it.
The implication of this is, as it's written, is that we would get, a program, a plan to approve. Again, this is the focus of what, it's basically an agreement with both you gentlemen are saying, is that we need a road plan that we can review and a plan and adjust and approve or disapprove. We need a golf drainage. Rather than having it simply in the fold of the budget process, it becomes a separate item that draws the attention of the board beyond the general budget work.
Because we have to look at the plan and see that the plan's reasonable before it even gets to the budget process. I think this needs to be finished. Now, the second thing is with the drainage project, if I may.
Sure.
That kind of falls in the same category.
Yeah, it does.
We we suspended the
one year
drainage program.
suspension, right.
On the logical basis that with a new management company who, had all kinds of credentials, we would certainly like to see that program reviewed, and which was started back in boards that preceded mine when Dan was back. See it reviewed and get their expert opinions on it. Now's the time for their expert opinion. On the drainage program, there are other issues too that we'd like to hear about, but on the drainage program, before we get into the budget cycle.
Yeah, and I personally like two words in this statement, and that's such as, which means, gentlemen, it's not restricted to A and
It can be
B.
other
There are other things that can fall under this.
Yeah.
You know, Dave, you made a comment on this at the last meeting, which I was 100% in agreement with, and that the golf drainage was an example in this community of what we oftentimes don't do too well, and that's long-range planning. And I remember going back and looking at video, Dan, of your board meeting way back when a presentation was made of that plan. And I know there's some people who were originally opposed to it, after they heard the presentation and understood what it was trying to do, changed their positions actually and supported it. So it's a major program that was a long-term success, I think, story, and we need the same thing with the road now with given, we had it, by the way. It's not, by the way, Dave, I believe the plan, I know the plan existed prior to the cutoff of funding for the state of Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
You have to operate with a plan, and we've always had a plan. It wasn't a consequence of that. So we just had to interrupt that plan on the road service, and it turned out that the next 2 years were going to be Ocean Parkway in the 10-year plan. So,
We're not here to debate.
okay.
The
The point is, we all agree, I think, that they need to be separate and as a separate
I'm hearing
item.
support for this
Yeah,
at this point,
absolutely.
Dave, anything beyond whether it should or shouldn't be on the list. I just want to get into the weeds of what,
Right.
voting up or down on that.
It's really
particular issue
important.
at this point, okay? Number 6, as they say in basketball terms, you could give yourself a layup by putting it on the list. I suggest we take it off the list. We've done it.
I think you ought to get credit for accomplishing something this year, so let's leave it on.
It's done, Pete, go away.
He gets credit for it if it's on the list.
He gets credit.
Do we have a signed?
The fire department has the documents.
It hasn't been,
No, okay.
we're doing.
Hasn't been done yet.
Let's not be premature.
Okay.
We're on this 2-yard line, Dave, and there could always be a fumble
You're
or an
not a Redskins
interception.
fan, right?
So leave it on the list.
All right, we'll leave 6 on there. I don't mind the layup.
There's not going to be a problem.
At this point. All right, number 7, study adjusting director's spending authority from 20% of annual revenues per project to 500,000 per project.
Was that yours, Tom? Did
That
you-
was not
Oh,
mine.
Whose was that? We're only funding you, Dan.
Guinea
We're
pigs.
only funding you.
We're only getting ready. I think we know the source of this one, but that's okay. Keywords here, if I was able to truncate the write-up, and the word is study. Dan, I'll let you speak to this.
Well, that's the key word, is study. In other words, let's, ladies and gentlemen, take a look at this and see what the upside and downsides are. We have certainly received some commentary from the community that they're interested in this subject. I suggest that the board should take a look at it, and when it's convenient for the board, deal with it, one way or the other.
Good?
I'd have been terribly disappointed had you not made that suggestion.
That's how I got here, Pete.
I
There's
know,
no
it's-
way I wasn't going to talk about
I
it.
understand exactly how you got here. But that's not what we're talking about. And certainly, I believe that we should debate that this year. However, is it one of the most important goals of us as a board to embrace this? In my mind, it's not. Again, as we've had the discussion up to this point, what we're trying to do here, and I mentioned this at the last meeting, trying to define the parameters of what it is we're doing here today, having postponed it from the last meeting, we're trying to establish as a board the objectives that we hope collectively to achieve this year, the most important goals. And it is well recognized that Dan or Pete or Dave or anybody else will have things that during the course of the year they want the board to address. There will be motions, there will be discussion items and so forth, all appropriate. And certainly I have every expectation that we will discuss this, whether it's an objective or not. What I don't see personally is it being rising for me to the level that says, boy, this is one of the most important things we as a board want to achieve this year, is to look at reducing a 20% threshold approved by the voters, by the way, in the bylaw revisions of August 9th, 2008, just 3 years ago, a 20% threshold.
Now you're
So
doing
I'm not going to
the
debate.
debate. You're doing the
No,
debate. You're
I'm going to
doing
cut
the
it off right there. I'm going to cut it off
I was
right there.
about to.
I'm cutting myself
I wanna
off,
go get my
okay?
frog stick.
Now
So I
you
guess
get your frog stick.
This is the car.
I've made my comment.
Dave, go ahead.
Or Bill, I think. I was-
No, Bill, go ahead.
Along the same line, I see our goal is to address the long-range needs of the community, including major facilities, infrastructure, and the business and recreational amenities. That's really our goal. And all these other things are objectives, things we're going to do to try to accomplish that. And this item 7, which I know is well thought out by Dan, is something that we will need to discuss during the course of the year at some point in time when we get to that. But I don't think it's necessarily a major objective. It's something that's going to come to a discussion as we are addressing one of our objectives.
Dave, then Rick.
Yeah, if Dan will put that up as a motion at some point in the future board meeting, I'll second it for purposes of discussion.
Discussion, or whatever.
But also, by the way, you mentioned goals a couple of times, so let me point out, Bill, we do have board-approved goals. You know, they're on the webpage, and they have not ever been rescinded. Nobody's, as a matter of fact, I haven't heard anybody go back and say negative. And they're fairly broad, you know, they're fairly...
Director goals?
Sure, board of director goals. So.
Well, I am aware of that, and I keep saying, and I know how goals and objectives work. I spent a lifetime dealing with goals and objectives. And the objectives absolutely are the things you're doing to accomplish the goal.
Yeah.
That's how it is. And you
Yeah,
need
and
to
let me-
work towards the goal.
Let me clarify, these goals are OPA, the Ocean Pines Association.
Exactly.
Association goals, and as the governing body, we as a board created and adopted those goals after significant debate. Now, we could review those goals again, and probably they should be reviewed from time to time, but they're there. And by the way, you know, they map to
Right, exactly.
these
They map to what we've got.
We're down.
Right, go ahead.
To paraphrase what Pete said earlier, as far as we micromanaging ourselves, we seem to be, everything that's on this list from first down to 12 are things that I'm very much familiar with our general manager having his finger on and works on a regular basis. So all of this stuff that we're talking here now, we really have to, follow his lead on bringing some of these in. I also remember sitting on the board with somebody else where we had a unanimous decision to change it from 10 to 20.
Percent.
Yeah, percent. And it was a unanimous vote, and it hasn't been abused since then. And that came about because of what I view was an abuse when they had a meeting at the yacht club and decided with 1.4 million in reserves to take $1 million of it and cover the indoor pool. I was the one that went to the following meeting and asked them to finance half of it so we wouldn't go that low on the reserves. And that's why the thinking was we take it to 20% because that's a usable number. If we go to $500,000, we're going to be spending most of our time sending out referendums.
Yeah, we're not going to debate.
That's debating.
That's
The issue-
the issue, right.
I'm sorry I had to make it.
No, listen,
Yeah.
some of this is bound to go into a gray area of, how things got on the list. I understand that.
Okay.
The issue is that clearly, you can add into here that referendums cost us anywhere between $8,000 and $11,000 to send out a referendum. So you can argue, we could argue this all day. The issue here is, I think, clear, and we're going to go through our process I suggested. If there's nothing else to add on that, I'll move to number 8. Number 8, study financial plans to address possible IRS case outcomes. Since I wrote this one, I'll present this one. I believe this board of directors this coming year has a responsibility to make the IRS case, not that we've ignored it. We've clearly gone to court. We're there. I don't want to play in that world. We don't need to do a thing over there. What we do need to do is get ready for what the options may or may not be it win or lose. And I personally do not want to be standing there flat-footed when somebody finally sends me the answer from the court. Just my belief that this board, in conjunction with others, obviously,
We'll have to make a
need to pay
decision.
attention and get ready for the IRS case and the response. That's my 2 cents on this one. Dave?
Yeah. I don't believe in planning without information. and we don't have the sufficient information. We don't know, even if we lose the case, we don't know all of the information we'll need to know what we have to do in the future. And until we get to that point, we won't know. Now, we can speculate all we want, but that's all it is speculation on the future. And, I don't, just say it's wasting time because, that's in the eye of the beholder. But on the other hand, though, I think it could detract eventually, perhaps, from a reasonable, once we get the information, from reasonably sitting down, looking at it, seeing what the IRS says we have to do, and what our lawyers believe will comply with the IRS's rule. We need to know what it is first, and we will find out one way or another.
Terry?
But it's clear from the reaction from the community that they want a plan in place.
Bill?
Both what Terry and Dave were saying, no matter what we do, we need to make sure we do not take any actions that may compromise our position with the IRS. We're admitting that we're doing something wrong.
Dan?
Don't we at this point have a pretty good feeling for what the liability
Yes.
might be
We know
based on the
exactly
case
what it
we
is.
have?
We know
All right.
precisely.
We know precisely what it is.
So when I read this, Tom, I read simply, to paraphrase it, establish a contingency plan or set aside that covers the immediate liability if we were to lose the case, so that we don't get burned. And that, I think, is viable. I think that we should be a step ahead of that. I don't know that it has to be a goal. I think that's just an operational motion that says we do this.
Process.
Again, it may not make the cut as the top list, but it's something I listed
Yeah.
it, so I'll talk more about it.
I think it's important,
To
but
me, this is something we need to be paying attention to.
Sure.
But, Dave is not incorrect. I am assuming that we would have to come up with what the various options might be
down the road.
down the road. I mean, we have to speculate as to what may or may not happen in order to do the plan. It may not be 100% on, but that's, any other questions on this one? Next one, review, the famous review, adjust, and/or approve a plan to improve quality of food service at the yacht club. Bill?
I think with the actions of the general manager last week, that process has probably already begun. And I'm assuming we'll be hearing further follow-up from the general manager.
Oh, yeah.
Dan?
I submit that is not a board goal, that's taking us into micromanaging the general manager. We don't want to be there.
Correct.
I take a different view of it. This board a year ago made a decision in support of upgrading, improving the quality of food and service at the yacht club. Very, very important to the organization. It chose to not outsource it, but rather keep it in-house, and actually suggested a year time frame in which to evaluate the performance. So the board clearly has had a role in this. It made a decision to not outsource it. It was a close vote, and we said we'd revisit it in a year. I, for one, think that is not micromanaging. We made that decision, and I think it's still an important objective to improve, particularly when we're talking about the significant renovation costs. Whatever option we choose, it's going to cost a lot of money with respect to the yacht club. So that being the case, to me, this is a board area of concern and should be a board objective in my mind. Others may disagree, and that's fine, but I think it rises to the level of, since we've already established it as an important aspect of the success of this community and have already voted once upon a time, the previous board, to do a certain thing, I think it ought to be on the list.
Terry?
I think it's a function of the general manager, and I think that this is one of those things that, once he does his work, is another point of discussion that can be brought in, we can introduce at whatever time it is that he's...
Dave? Dave Hand?
I'm thinking of what Terry said. You're saying that basically it's sort of a general manager objective, as it certainly is, and that we should find out at some point in the future whether or not.
Yeah, I'm not
these-
saying that it's not something that the board should not be strongly involved in, but I don't think it's necessarily a board objective. I think it's first a general manager objective to come up with whatever that plan is and then bring it to the board.
Okay, and that's.
Yeah, you got the point. You and Terry kind of had it.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to.
I'll stop.
I just wanted to understand it. I mean, but, okay, and I don't disagree. I think what first of all, this has been a board objective since I've been on the board. That's 4 years.
Correct.
And it never has not been. And different boards have attacked it in different ways. And I agree with Pete that whether or not you think this is micromanaging or not, there are serious board decisions that have been explored and one at least made that requires this. This is a major factor. Food and service. But the thing is, though, food and service, is it good or is it bad? It is fairly a nebulous thing. What I'd like to know, and I'd like to see it fairly soon, is a review of what's happened last year in terms of the service training plans that were conducted. What did we do to get better service? I guess the question is even open as to whether or not we have achieved any better service or any better food. What did we do to get there? What management steps are going to be, what are the new management steps that are going to be in place that's going to change that? And we have explored all of these things every single year in the past that I've been on the board.
And well before that. This is not the first time that it's been outsourced twice over the years. It's been outsourced. People have been bounced. The board has gone over as a group and tested food. It goes on and on and on and on.
It does.
This is not a new topic, Pete,
No.
but
Yeah, it has been outsourced 3 previous times. 2 were a similar kind of range of management contract, third was a lease, but in any event, 3 previous times. But that was 15 years ago, perhaps, or 12 years ago or something. More recently, however, about a year ago almost, the task force, outsourcing task force, made specific recommendations accompanied by justification for courses of action. The board decided to outsource golf and to not outsource. We created a new term, at least new to me, insourcing, with the food and beverage operation. But part of the things that Dave just mentioned here, one of the advantages, and it was a policy decision, whether or not we as an organization outsource through a management contract, operating contract, our food and beverage operations, specifically the yacht club. And among the benefits to outsourcing were, number 1, improved marketing, i.e. promotion, getting more revenue. Training was a key aspect. We don't have the capability here we did not then, and I don't think now have the capability of training properly those employees. So there are various aspects of outsourcing, whether it be Casper or anybody else for that matter. We had 3 different firms that we looked at. But there was very identifiable benefits and objectives to be achieved by outsourcing versus insourcing. So here we are. Terry, with all due respect, I don't think it's a question to let the general manager decide what to do. We directed him last year. We said, okay, we made a decision, and I support what, I didn't. I didn't support it, but once the decision was made, I did.
yes, you did. That's right.
Exactly, okay? But I also said, okay, we've said we're going to give it a year. Now it's a year. Now I don't think the right answer is we'll let the general manager decide what he wants to do.
The question on this table is, and I think we've had enough discussion around this one as to whether or not we leave it on the list or not whether we go back and outsource or insource or whatever at this point. Number 10, continue assessment of spending plans for casino revenue. That's, who wants to speak to that one? I can if you need to.
Continued assessment.
Well, I think
Study it.
let me just put the words that I believe are around this one. It's just a matter of, do you assume that we've already made the final decisions and that path has been fully thought through and we're done, receiving input from the general manager and making policy decisions and we just follow that forward? Or is there still more work to do, I believe is the question that's on the table on this one.
Let me take a crack at this. I believe this should be on here, I believe this maybe should be here, okay? I believe if it is on here, the wording ought to be changed.
Okay?
And again, I say this we have already passed a board resolution that restricted, and this is going back 5 months perhaps, into the spring, April, May timeframe. We passed a board resolution which Pete Gomsack initially proposed to restrict those funds for roads, and Dave amended that, which I agreed with, to make it for infrastructure, consistent with the law. These funds are restricted by legislation to infrastructure. That's a broad term. But we have not concluded. More recently, the general manager reintroduced the idea that they be roads directed, but we haven't taken that action as yet. So we still have a standing resolution that has restricted those funds. So I would suggest that we need to get off the dime and make a specific decision as to how we're going to use that. And that ties in with the earlier discussion about how significant the road paving program is to this community and how we're now 4 years. So I would say, instead of continuous assessment, I would say develop a plan to allocate and spend revenues from the casino revenues. Now, we can introduce a motion at the next meeting that restricts it to create a separate fund for road reserves, road resurfacing reserves, and the board can create new reserve accounts. So that would perhaps be one way to do it to fulfill that objective. But I think we need to not continue to assess it, to actually make a resolution and get something on the table.
Dave?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe I partly agree, probably don't. We're collecting the money, we're putting in a earmarked account, not earmarked for anything specific, but earmarked for infrastructure.
Yes.
So we've already done that.
We've done that.
And we know that.
Right.
Okay. Idea is, when we have a roads plan, which I'm hoping we'll have soon, we'll have, October, whatever. We've already sort of got one, Bob's gonna modify it, it's gonna come, and guess what? It's gonna tell us that we need X amount of dollars each year for the next 10 years or however long it goes to do this if we don't get any roads money from the state. It might tell us that if road funding should reappear, we'll need some less amount of money. But there will be, that'll be part of the plan, to know how much money we need. Okay, when we know how much money we need, it's probably going to be more than we have in our slots, earmarked line, and we're going to take it out and we're going to spend it on it, and we're going to say we have transferred the money out of this into this infrastructure account, and that's how we spend it, guys. Now, if we end up getting a lot of money from the state, hey, wishful thinking, then we're going to go to drainage or something else, which is a specific infrastructure need. And we're going to take the money out, and we're going to say, look, we have transferred it into this infrastructure account, and that's how we've met the requirement, and they'll be fine with it. And as I said in here, if we can't find any needs, then we should give the money back, right?
I'd like to disagree with you, Dave, but I can't. And I won't.
Right.
No, you and I are in agreement. I think the better, and it may not need to be on here at all, by the way, but I think what we probably need to do is to get the plan for the roads, as you suggest, and then decide how much of the infrastructure, we need to create an infrastructure reserve account, number one. We're on kind of a whole, anyway.
You're solving the road problem.
We're solving the wrong problem. Anyway, should it be on the list or not?
That's the question that's on the table.
I think we have to solve it one way or the other.
Go ahead.
Again, I'm just going to mention that this also was something that the general population was very concerned about.
Yeah.
So it's important to them,
Yeah. Dan?
What were they concerned about, the money or the roads?
what we're going to do with the money.
Right.
It's a recurring question, you're exactly right. The other one is a
We
recurring
need to resolve it for the community,
The other
is what,
And for ourselves.
We do represent them.
Gentlemen and ladies, we've already talked about lady, one singular, there's only one of us
There's
at
more
the board.
ladies in the room than me.
I see that.
he's addressing.
because I'm new here, I'm hearing two things coming out that kind of bother me. One of them is, this doesn't bother me, and that's that the previous board has already made the decision to put these funds into an infrastructure holding account and use them for infrastructure needs. So from that perspective, the decision's made.
Yes.
The only issue is which infrastructure items is it going to be used on? And that's not a goal. That's simply an annual operating budget issue.
Decision that has to be made every year.
Get it off the list.
Get it off.
You know, put it in the newspaper, hey, guys, we answered this question, here's how it's gonna happen, we're done.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So off the list it goes.
And what we need, Terry, if I may, we need a better explanation to the public of what we're doing, perhaps, than we've had.
Yeah, what's the source of their information?
I mean, well, I'm not gonna disagree with
All the
that.
papers, it's been all the papers, it's gonna go to infrastructure. I mean, it's been dozens of times, everybody knows where it's supposed to.
Okay, we've talked about.
Yeah, we're on record as a board, it's been well publicized how we're viewing these funds. I think every publication has carried articles on it.
All right, moving on to 11. Review, adjust, or approve a plan. By the way, all of these plans that are listed in this wonderful document, you know, obviously come out of, you know, the GM presenting to us. It's not, you know, not us creating something on our own universe, just to make sure we're clear on it. Approved plans for IT implementation to include video equipment utilization, Pine Card Pass concepts. Again, this was one that was, you know, do we or don't we as a board focus in on this as an objective for us for this year,
I
right?
think that's already been, you know, that's a function of the general manager. And they're all in the process of doing it.
Let me, the general manager doesn't set his own objectives for the year. He reacts to the objectives set by the board. That's how it should work, right? And then we evaluate the general manager's performance against those objectives. He has his own objectives as well. He's allowed to do that. But the general manager is accountable to the board. And the board sets the policy and establishes the priority goals for the year. The general manager is then charged with executing the plans to do that, okay? IT is something that I think probably needs more attention, and I don't think Bob would disagree with that. And I know he's got plans and so forth, but if we don't consider it important enough to establish an objective, that's one thing. If we do, that's another. So I, for one, think it's a legitimate objective. Whether or not it rises to the top 6 or something, it's another matter. But I don't think everything just falls to the, well, let the general manager figure it out, because he needs the direction and guidance of the policymaking group, that is the board.
Bill?
I think that the Pines Card Pass concept is something that we have to develop and expand. I think it's a tool that we can use to, again, to help meet the needs, the financial needs of our community, of our membership, and we can be creative with it that would provide community members to use more of our business and recreational facilities at not an additional financial cost to them, to at least have that experience. I think there are a lot of things we can do with that, and I think that's something that needs to be expanding in the use of the Pines Card Pass concept. We really need to be one of our objectives for what's going on.
It's also a data source.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tremendous data source for everything else that we want to do on this list.
Dan?
The interesting thing about this whole area is that use of technology is something that we're getting better at as an organization, but we got a long way to go, folks. And one of the examples under this that we haven't discussed at this table yet is something that was used at the last general meeting, and that was a streaming video presentation that you could watch at home. One of the interesting aspects of that is that we didn't have a quorum sitting in the meeting, but there may be a way electronically to verify that a legitimate property owner is watching the streaming video and has the capability to two-way interact with the meeting. And all of a sudden, a lot of those issues, like quorums, goes away. So exploring, I don't know how I think it's an ongoing thing for Ocean Pines that we keep looking hard at where technology can increase our productivity and reduce our cost. And I don't know that that we're paying enough attention to that right now, whether it's this goal as it's written, or whether the goal is simply to continue examining technology and implementing it where possible. I really would like to see us keep a focus on the use of the additional and continuing development of technology within Ocean Pines, applied technology. That's the trick.
I think the argument that for this one is that, is this a policy level, a topic of attention that the board of directors wants to inject in even more than what's been done up till now. That's the sense I got right up that came with this. Bill?
Well, I feel, I agree 100% with Dan, what he's saying. We're not making adequate use of technology, and I think with the expanded use of technology, we can really improve, enhance the Ocean Pine experience in numerous ways. And that needs, technology as we had discovered over the last 20 years, is an ongoing process. You never reach the finish line with it, and it needs to be an objective of the board of directors to continue to explore as many avenues as possible to incorporate technology and to, again, make the Ocean Pine experience a more beneficial experience for everyone.
Pete?
Yeah, I'm going to add my voice to support its inclusion as well. I think it does rise to the level, as you suggest, Tom, as a policy level. We need to be embracing technology to a greater degree than we are now. I don't have all the answers. Nobody here has all the answers, and most people around here are more technologically savvy than me. But nonetheless, I appreciate the fact that we need to do more. We're going to spend some bucks on it, no question about it. You can't invest in technology with no money. But I think it being established as a priority of this board to accomplish this helps the general manager, I think, put the proper amount of emphasis on it. So I'm in support of it being on the list.
Okay.
Yeah, I won't disagree about it's being on the list, but a couple of points. I believe, we talk again about a plan, and one of the things I think we ought to go back and do is define what we mean by a plan and what information we expect to be in it. The second thing is most of if not all of the things that are on this list are things that we expect out of the general manager, and he delivers them, he puts them down in front of us, and we approve it or disapprove it, and that's the concept. In this particular area, I mean, it's not just the only one, the general manager isn't the only source of information, and not necessarily even the best source of information. As a practical matter, he has to know what can be done and what can't be done with the resources that he has at hand, and ask for more resources, so he gets down to the implementation. Sure, that's where he is. But the ideas need to come from other people. They need to come, well, let me say, from a broader base. We talked about a charging document, and I was hard pressed to think of anything, but the communications committee is one potential source, or a broader subcommittee of that that should do that. The other thing Terry said is, it could be, and this is an example of what I mean. It can be a data collection. I mean, information technology can be tremendous data collection. But unless you know what data and what you want to use it for, unless you think that out first, it doesn't matter what technology, what the equipment is or the collection is that you get. You don't figure it out later, you figure it out in advance. And that gets into a broader area than just the technology itself, just absolutely the key cards or whatever. Those are the ways to do it. What you want to do has to be figured out first. And I don't know whether or not that's part of the plan that the general manager, I'd like to look top down at those things and see what is it we're trying to accomplish with that stuff. And I think the committees are, by the way, across the board, essential in coming up with that information. Bill?
What we want to accomplish is an open-ended situation. There's never closure on what you want to accomplish with the use of technology. So we can't say, this is what we want to accomplish. It's an ongoing thing. We want to accomplish, what we want to accomplish is infinite. As technology improves, there's more things available to accomplish. And it is, I feel, it's the responsibility of the OPA management team, that includes the board of directors and the general manager, to never give up on exploring the possibilities of technology and how it can make the Ocean Pines experience a more positive experience than what it is. And there are, the job of the board of directors and the general manager is to decide what we need. We might not have to get it, use the technology, but then we need the general manager to then, this is what we need, to find out how we're going to do it, or what skills we need to do. So this is an objective that is going to be ongoing. There's not closure to it. There's never, the things that what we want it to do is infinite. 2 years from now, there will be different things and more things we can do with it than we can do now. Maybe 6 months from now.
Yes.
Just as in number 1 and 2, I think maybe a more general category might be appropriate. I just scribbled down some words, but I think IT ought to be on there in some fashion. I just threw some words together. Determine an IT strategy for the association and approve a plan for the next several years to evaluate the technology needs and a plan to implement necessary changes, something like that. But just a broader policy thing than rather video cards or Pines Card Pass concept would be an alternative here. I don't care what it is. It seems to me that we're all agreeing that we need to face up to a board objective of me, but a more general might make sense.
Okay.
If others would be supportive of that. So.
12, re-examine access and egress to Ocean Pines.
Explain, please.
What in the world does that mean?
Explain.
How you going to get in, how you going to get out?
I think this is kind of fun.
How many guards do we need?
And I think a couple of us have been a little concerned about this. Obviously, there's the simple fact, if you think about it, that there are currently 3 ways in and out of Ocean Pines. 4. Four, I'm sorry. I always forget the Beecham Road, St. Martin's Road way out. But that still takes you to 589. Okay, the North Gate takes you to 589. Cathal Road and Cathal Road Extended get you across 589 to Route 50. And the South Gate gets you to 589. So when you start talking about access and egress, as our population becomes more and more permanent, the July to October fun season in Ocean Pines and the rest of the East Coast isn't going to go away. And Irene came right close and was kind of getting in the range that was going to be interesting. And Ocean Pines and Ocean City and the whole area responded beautifully. All the plans worked. What we don't know is what would have happened if there was a real evacuation order that came out with that. Could the people on the south side of Ocean Pines, for example, get out of here in the time that they had to get out, given where they have to go? And at least 2 of you live down there. You understand what I'm talking about in terms of what happens with the road. Discussions have already gone on in front of the board about the North Gate at Ocean Pines being expanded to more lanes. I don't know that that's an issue that will be discussed. There's one that you may not know about, though, and that's that on the south side of Ocean Pines, about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, somewhere in that range, the 2 builders who own the adjacent property to Ocean Pines were ready to give Ocean Pines a 90-foot easement all the way up and down the border of Ocean Pines, specifically to be used to build another access egress road, which could, with some county cooperation, have been taken across 589, connected to another road that would take us straight to Route 50. So there are a whole series of possibilities here that are worth looking at. Is it a goal for this year to say we are going to have some form of plan? I would not sit here and say that, because I don't think it's possible to do that. This is one of those, it depends on way too many things. But I also look at a board of directors, and I think most of us do at this table, as a group of people who are supposed to be able to look over the horizon. That's our job. That's not the general manager's job particularly. So we need, this one is there as kind of a warning flag that just says, don't forget about the fact that we do have some potential big problems in Ocean Pines with getting in and getting out if we need to do it relatively rapidly. And is there anything we can start doing to start implementing that? The deal with the two builders went away because the county said there's no way in the world that we're even going to consider that at this point in time. That may come back because they're still there. One of them has 60 lots that's already part of Ocean Pines that he's going to want to open up. And Ocean Pines is going to become the access and egress route for them. So that's why it's there. I mean, that's why it's on there.
All right. Dave, you want to, I'm sorry.
Yeah, those are the only, those are two things, happened while I was on the board, both stirred up
Yep.
considerable controversy and of course, being Ocean Pines, opposition. Both the North Gate under Gillis, when he bought it, and then the South Gate, when that property was bought by Burbidge and Steen. And so they were looked at by the board, and I wouldn't say they came to no end because I think they're still sitting there. Some would say festering, and they both were illustrative, though, of the types of problems that you face, no matter how you cut it, both internal and external to Ocean Pines, before you can seriously actually make something happen different than our current ingress and egress. Now, by the way, I would believe, we have a group right now that's working on a comprehensive plan for Ocean Pines. And I think that'll end up being one of the sections of that plan. And, I think that's a suitable place for that type of investigation. But I don't know that it's an objective for the board this year.
Okay. We'll move to the next phase of this little effort we have here. Since we've combined 1 and 2, and 6 in essence is a layup, it's up to folks how they vote, but what I want you to do is get out a piece of paper, and if you want 1 and 2, just write 1 and 2 together, and then pick 3 others, or 4. If you don't want 1 and 2, you don't have to vote for that. Pick your top 4. And, top 4 from this list. And remember that 1 and 2 are combined.
Rip's gonna pull them up there. You don't want a name on them, you just want to...
No names, no, just...
You want these, Tom?
Yep.
That's pretty good. Put on the elbow.
They do it, just a chair and paper. That's very nice. I want you to read
I promise I'll reciprocate.
That's why there's a short agenda on a long sheet of paper.
You can always shorten it, sheet of paper.
Exactly, that's the idea.
copy on both sides.
Hey, look, at least you got an agenda for the meeting.
That's very dangerous. Copying on both sides.
Oh, yeah, no, that I wouldn't do that.
Because sometimes there's stuff on the other side that you don't want where you copy it.
Well, it's like that commercial, there's the executive compensation plan.
Right.
Separate item.
True.
You have to have somebody screening what's on the other side that you're copying.
devious mind over there.
No, it's probably happened to me.
Yeah.
Okay. We clearly have, here's the vote tally for everybody. Drum roll. 1 and 2 received 7 votes. Number 4 received 4. Number 3 was 1, excuse me. Number 5 was 7. 8 received 1 vote. 9 received 1 vote. And 11 received 7 votes.
Ain't that easy?
So that clearly has 1 and 2, 4, 5, 11 separating themselves from the pack. as
1,
being
2, 4,
focused.
5, 11, is that what you said?
Yep. That separates it from the pack. That does not mean the other things on the list are not valuable. Doesn't mean we won't ultimately talk about them at some point. Nothing stops any of this from being brought forward, but the focus will be basically facilities planning, I'll call it that grouping, the source of funding, the road maintenance, golf drainage, key maintenance programs, and 11, the review of IT implementation. We could debate for the next 3 hours whether to add anything else. The reality is these clearly separated themselves from the rest of the pack.
What was that count again, Tom? I'm sorry, I did, 1 and 2 got 7 votes.
1 and 2 got 7,
Right.
5 got 7.
3 got 1, 4 got 4, 5 got 7, and 8 got 1, 9 got 1, and 11 got 7.
So we're 1, 2, 4, 5,
10
and
got 1.
11.
1,
Yes.
2, 4, 5, and 11.
8,
Thank
10,
you.
and 11 got 1.
8 and 9.
8 and 9.
8 and 9 got 1.
Okay.
Okay, but 1, 2, 4, 10, and 11. I mean, 1, 2, 4, 5, and
11, correct.
Good, thank you.
1, 2, 4, 5, and 11.
We have 4 basic goal areas, which is now achievable for a board of directors for a year.
Absolutely.
How I see it.
I'm sorry, I missed that, I was busy.
I just said that it normally, and this goes to your experience as a senior manager as well, anytime you set up more than 6 goals for an organization for the course of a year, you're probably not going to achieve number 7, 8, and 9. So I think we're in great shape.
And that was a conscious effort, I think, on Tom's part to reduce this year the number that we,
I think it's a
It's
great job.
accomplishable.
everything can't be equally as important.
I will take a
Good job.
motion for adjustment.
So moved.
Split. Oh, motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
All right,
Aye.
Opposed?
all right, good.